What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Opera Anna. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna. I am an opera singer and I am here to opera up your life. That is right. Opera is alive and kicking, not a dying art form. Today we have our very first example of a pants roll, aka a trouser roll, aka Hosenrolle a la Germany, because they came up with the Fach system, which we have literally still not gotten to on the channel, but it's coming. I know you don't believe me anymore, but it is coming. The aria we're looking at today is Cherubino's aria from Le Nozze di Figaro, Non so più cosa son, cosa faccio. Now, if you don't know what a Hosenrolle is, aka a trouser roll, aka a pants roll, aka a breeches roll, then make sure to stick around because I am going to explain it to you and I'm going to tell you why we have them in opera. Subscribe, like the video, and let's go. Now, I'd just like to point out that I think it's scandalous that I have waited this long to do a pants roll because it is literally my own Fach. I am a mezzo. I have sung Cherubino multiple times, but it's neither here nor there. I just wanted to point it out. A Hosenrolle is basically opera code for a role in an opera, usually of a pubescent boy, sort of around 14, 15, that is sung by a woman, usually a mezzo-soprano, usually, since the timbre of a mezzo-soprano is just somewhat richer, somewhat darker than a soprano, but not as dark as a contralto, and that it sort of falls in the sweet spot, if you will, of a teenage boy whose voice is going through some changes. Now, anyone who knows the channel knows that I love a bit of context. So to understand what the Hosenrolle is, we need to just go back in time a little bit, like 400, 500 years back in time, when the castrato first stormed the opera scene. In a practice that is considered now completely barbaric, the castrato voice was created by castrating a young boy before they hit puberty.
What?
In the hopes that his gorgeous boy soprano high notes would be complemented by the body of a full-grown man. Why? Because when a boy was castrated before he hit puberty, his body literally never stopped growing.
Wow.
It would not receive the hormonal signal to stop growing. His voice wouldn't change. His body would keep growing. And the castrati had the lung capacity of a freaking elephant. I don't even know. Lung capacity that singers can really only dream of today. There are anecdotes out the wazoo. But by all accounts, their bodies were completely out of proportion. The sound was angelic, and the virtuosity was just off the charts. Women were not even allowed on stage at the time, so the fact that they could sing really high made it possible for operas to be put on, or at least for female characters to be portrayed in opera.
Side eye.
However, the castrato voice and practice of creating a castrato eventually fell out of practice because, well, it was completely inhumane and barbaric and terrible what they did to those boys. Not forgetting that maybe 1 out of 100 boys who underwent the procedure actually had a career, or at least a superstar Freddie Mercury, like Beatles type of career. In any case, people finally realized that it was awful and the castrati died out. It remains, however, that composers needed a voice to be the star, or at least a voice type. Ironically enough, now that women were being allowed on stage, they started to take over the roles that the castrati had once occupied. And in the works of Baroque composers like Handel and Vivaldi and Hasse and the like, you see women singing the hero role that was left by the castrati. Eventually, a shift in the vocal archetypes occurred, and tenors, God love them, became the primo uomo, or I guess primi uomini, and women started to be cast in these sort of teenage boy roles, lending a very gender fluid, androgynous character to their role and to the opera.
Now it's a party.
By the time Mozart and Da Ponte started putting pen to paper for what would become Le Nozze di Figaro, the opera that we are looking at today, this was very common practice. Such common practice, in fact, that Beaumarchais, who wrote the play that Le Nozze di Figaro is based on, wrote in his character notes for Cherubino, quote, "Can only be played by a young and very pretty woman. We have no very young men who are at the same time sufficiently mature to appreciate the fine points of the part." I'm just saying. He called in a woman to do a man's job. I'm just... Y'all mad? I digress. Now you may be wondering, why did composers bother writing trouser rolls? Why not just write for a countertenor?
What does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
And the answer is, I don't know, really. But I have a theory, and it's twofold. Firstly, countertenors just weren't that popular at the time. They existed alongside castrati because it is another voice type. It's not that the countertenor evolved because castrati couldn't exist anymore. They just never shared the same success. Two, and more importantly, composers were looking for a sexual ambiguity that comes with a trouser roll character. There's a charged sexuality and innuendo that a woman playing a man lends, and composers played with this all the time. They knew what they were doing, weaving into the story that the boy, played by a girl, dresses up as a girl and then seduces the man. It's just, the duality is A, comical, and B, perhaps awkward in a way that a teenage boy inevitably is because it's being played by a woman. It's just a theory. I don't actually know. But if anyone does know why they wouldn't just write for a man or write for a countertenor, then by all means, let me know in the comments. So now that we have all of this context, let's get to our aria for the day. Non so più cosa son, cosa faccio. Cherubino, whose name translates to little cherub, literally, bursts onto the stage in his first scene with Susanna, exclaiming that he'll be thrown out of the castle if the Contessa doesn't intervene because the Count found him once again alone with Barbarina. Not a whole lot has happened in the story up until this point besides Figaro finding out that the Count wants to have intimate relations with Susanna and is employing all sorts of trickery to do so. This might not be a problem, except that Susanna is engaged to Figaro, and obviously Figaro doesn't. I mean, that would be weird if he was fine with it, right? Cherubino, who in essence is kind of a lot like the Count in that he really wants to get with a lot of women at the same time, but is actually totally different from the Count because he doesn't have a wife, is in love with any and literally all women that he comes across. And unlike the Count, he's completely unaware of why he feels this way. For this aria, we are starting with the recitativo, which, as you will know, is speech-like singing that differs from the aria because it really furthers the plot. They're having a conversation. It's dialogue, but sung. I almost never start with the recitativo, but because it is so integral to the plot and it is so ridiculously hard to sing this aria without it, I find it very fitting. And also our singer today, Federica von Stade, is so good, and I just want to listen to her more. Non so più cosa son, cosa faccio.
Se tutto mio cosa volete? Ah, col mio, che accidenti! Fare vostro, cosa venne? Il conte, gli ha ripetito il nome sul quel Barbarina, il congedo mi tiene. E se la contessina, la mia bella comare, graziosamente cede, io non vedo più, Susanna mia, non vedete più me.
Okay, wow. Burst onto the scene. What did I say? So the first real look that we've ever gotten on this vlog at recitativo, and if it's not clear yet, then I hope it will become clear how gorgeously, expertly written it is by Mozart and gorgeously sung by our singer Federica von Stade. She is the epitome of Cherubino for many of us. She comes rushing in saying, Susanetta, sei tu? Susanna, is that you? In my subtext, he has been running around the castle endlessly looking for her because he needs the Countess's help. And he can get that via Susanna because Susanna is her chambermaid. Yes, chambermaid? Maid? Like lady in waiting? Like main servant? I don't know what it's called. Anyway, so he's desperate to get the Countess's help because Cherubino being Cherubino was messing around with Barbarina and the count walked in. However, it becomes clear later in the opera why the count was looking for Barbarina, because he wanted to get with her too.
No?
But for him, it's really freaking weird because he's like twice her age. Nah, close to twice her age, maybe. Still, it's not good. It's not good. He has a wife. Like, just, bro, keep it in your pants. Just, you literally have she's right there. The wife is right there. Go be with her. So he explains to her, if you don't help me, I will never see you again because the count's gonna kick me out of the castle. Bravo. Yeah. The countess is really his biggest crush, which is why she said this. So I think it's worth noting that they're not trying to hide at all the fact that she's a woman. It's, she's wearing boy clothes or whatever, a page's clothes, but it's not like they put a ton of makeup on her to make it look like she has a super, rock, whatever, cut jawline.
He's giving you angles. He's giving you cheekbone. He's giving me jaw.
We're not trying to hide the fact that she's a woman because it's obvious, and also that sort of maybe ups the ambiguity, androgyny idea. In general, recitative is supposed to be the same rate as speaking, which is why you hear them going through it really, really quickly. They're not trying to create beautiful melodic lines or whatever. But just like in speaking, there's a sort of ebb and flow to the speed. I've sometimes heard recit where they just rattle off everything like they're trying to get out of the theater before the bar closes. But it's so disorienting and overwhelming and not at all interesting because it's not how real people talk. But with Flicka, with Federica von Stade, you can hear the subtext coming out, the list of things that Susanna gets to see and do with the Contessa that Cherubino is just dying to be able to experience himself. She gets to, pin her clothes on her, and she gets to undress her and then dress her again, drooling over himself. In my opinion, one of the most sexual parts of the entire opera. Like the things with Susanna and the Count, even though they are also hypersexualized, are just so awkward. They are so awkward.
Are you saying that you don't want to get with this?
So for me, they're not sexual at all. This part is so sensual and just oozing with desire. He is literally describing his fantasy. And the last thing that he says before he's distracted by Susanna just like waving something around is, oh my God, if I were in your position, if I were in your place, being able to undress her, I mean, it's a good thing he gets distracted because who knows where that was going to go. Nice. Okay, so Cherubino steals the ribbon that Susanna has of the Countess. But like any teenage boy, the thought of something so personal to the Countess, the person he will eventually marry and have a child with, third play in the Beaumarchais trilogy, The Guilty Mother. Ooh. He must have this ribbon for himself. The scene is so freaking fun, and I love the way Federica von Stade like runs around. She looks like such a teenage boy. It looks so, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's really good. Federica, amazing. And I love the way she says the line, "De dammelo sorella, dammelo per pietà." At first it's just very sweet. "De dammelo sorella, dammelo per pietà." Perfect use of repetition in recitativo. I love it. Right. So he has the ribbon. He is not going to give it back for the life of him. This translation just says, I'll never give it back. But he says, I will never give it back for the life of me. He is ready to die for that ribbon. And in exchange, he's going to give Susanna his little song that he wrote, which we actually hear later in the opera, his second aria, Voi che sapete. As a sort of cry for help almost, he's talking straight to women in that aria, expressing how he feels about them, but asking for help in how to explain love. What is love? Tell me, women, what is it? Cherubino, the original Ed Sheeran, just with his little guitar. Oh, okay. Siete voi pazzo. So Susanna takes this song and she's like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? I don't want your song. And Cherubino responds by saying, read it to every woman. Read it to the Contessa. Read it yourself. Read it to Barbarina. Read it to Marcellina, the miserable old lady who is trying to get Figaro to marry her instead and ends up being his mother. But okay, it's just his ultimate confession of that every woman is making him feel this way regardless. And you can hear how Mozart sort of writes it and then builds it up to this Marcellina, as if in recognizing that it's a ridiculous thought that he would also have feelings of love for Marcellina. Federica von Stade approaches this line actually much differently than I would. She sort of rattles off each one. Leggi la padrona, leggi la tu medesima, leggi la Marcellina, la la la. Like how I do it is I really build on each one as if I'm thinking of it right there. And then when I get to Marcellina, it's like, oh my God, every single woman in the palace. Which gives Susanna the room to say her next line. It's hard to watch roles or arias that you know so well because you sort of have your own recording in your head going as you're watching it. And if it doesn't meet your expectation, then it's sort of jarring in a way. Check out how crazy sudden the start of this aria is though. I'm going to go back a few seconds so that you can really appreciate how difficult it would be to sing this aria in, a concert or an audition. Voice has so much ring to it. Oh my goodness. Boom, aria. Actually, the conductor gives her like just the tiniest little pause before he starts the orchestra up, which I would actually find more difficult because if you have the tempo in your head from Susanna's last line, povero cherubino, siete voi pazzo, non so più cosa son, I rely on it just keeping going. And then if I have to wait for the orchestra, well, whatever. She did it perfectly, so it's totally fine. Mozart takes all the built-up momentum that he had in those last lines of recitative. Leggi la padrona, leggi la tu medesima, leggi la Barbarina, Marcellina, leggi la ogni donna palazzo, povero cherubino, siete voi pazzo, and puts it straight into the aria. But yeah, it's a bitch to start this aria right off the bat. It's so hard. So anyway, non so più cosa son, cosa faccio. I don't know who I am or what I'm doing. This inner turbulence that Cherubino experiences is all right there in the orchestra, and it literally never stops until the very, very end of the aria when he has this sort of realization, shall we say, but we'll get there. Swelling when it gets to be too much and then fading back, but never dying away, if you will. Listen to how the orchestra is, and Cherubino goes along with it. Let's keep going. Oh, that's an open O for sure. So what did I say? These waves of passion, like swelling up and growing. Solo ai nomi d'amore di diletto. Half step up. Mi si turba, mi sale del petto. I mean, Mozart. What a guy. What a guy. I really like as well that she just says what she says. she stays put in her position. It's really, really tempting in this aria to have this sort of like nervous energy in your body, but it can get really excessive because that's already in the orchestra and in the music. So as an audience, I feel just much more drawn to her because she is so still and letting it speak through her voice. But it's so hard. Oh, you guys got to know how hard it is. Ugh. What? What is up? You want to be in the video too? Say hi. Say hi. You gotta look that way. There you go. Oh, floopy flop. Oh my goodness. Oh no, we don't like that. Oh no, Popeye's here. Come on, guys. I'm trying to do something here. And now it repeats. I will say it's quite high for a mezzo. New idea. Right, so like I was saying, it's a really high roll for a mezzo. A lot of mezzi don't like it because it's like constantly going up to a G in this one, and then it has to be really delicate as well in some places. I like it because I'm a high mezzo. So anyone out there looking for a cherubino, call me. Anyway, so we have a new idea. Parlo d'amore vegliando, parlo d'amore sognando. I speak of love when I'm awake and I speak of love when I'm dreaming. And I love how you can hear in the woodwinds this slow descending line, while the strings have changed from this very upbeat major quality to a minor quality and make everything feel more hushed. I feel like you can like hear the wind going through the trees. That's, in my head, that's what happens. And it gives it this sort of like anxious, what's going to happen feeling. You see her also move off away from Susanna in the direction kind of into Cherubino's own little world, right? As he's sort of reliving what happens to him probably, like 4 times a day. Let's listen to the transition again because I think it's just so great. Woodwinds. Strings. Picks it up again. Getting more excited. That's what mezzi don't like. I don't like it either because it's straight in the passaggio and you just have to just open up your soul to the world, and it's really hard. It just occurs to me that this like incessant listing of things that he talks to, so to the water, to the shade, to the mountains, to the flowers, to the grasses, to the wind, ai venti, it's like this obsessiveness of, a little bit like a drug addict, which I guess love is in a way, right? The drug of love. Does anyone say that? You just want to talk about it all the time. You want to talk about that person all of the time. And for him, every single woman is that person. So he, oof, boy, Godspeed. That sounds really difficult. And apparently if you're Cherubino, you also just hope that the wind carries your thoughts to the person that you're thinking of. She has this gorgeous brightness to her voice, which I think is just so fitting to Cherubino. It's probably also why she is the epitome of Cherubino. So in a second, he decides to repeat what he just said, parlo d'amore vegliando, parlo d'amore sognando. And the director, or maybe von Stade herself, has chosen to show off Cherubino's charm in this end section of the aria. He is, lest we forget, a successful Cherubino and seems almost like a Don Giovanni type if it goes wrong, but then much younger and actually likes women. So it's always a good idea, I think, to let Cherubino seduce Susanna, or at least try to seduce Susanna in this part a little bit. In this aria, it's Susanna. In Voi che sapete, it will be Contessa. But let's watch the whole way through, because when I first saw this version, I was just transfixed by the way that Federica von Stade does this part. Oh, you see him remember that Susanna is there. Oh my god. The decrescendo though. Girl? No, but really, where do I start? Because firstly, that decrescendo on con me. Let's watch it again. Ah! Shut up! What the hell? Come on. Oh, this makes me want to sing Cherubino again. I sort of moved away from it because I was like, I want to sing something harder, but idiot. Oh my god. Secondly, he goes over to her and like dares her to come closer, to take the bait when he says, "Esse non ho chi mora." I don't have anyone who listens. It's so playful and so fun. And at the same time, Mozart has this very, for lack of a better word, depressing, like very, very, very minor thing going on. And he stops and starts it over and over again. I've seen interpretations where people go fully into that like dark side of Cherubino.
Give yourself to the dark side.
Which I think is also really interesting and shows, sort of the person underneath. But sometimes it's just not that serious. And Federica von Stade really, really chooses for, the playful side. And both are good choices, I think. It just depends on what you want. And of course, of the concept of the piece, this looks like it's just very like straight, like this is how we're doing it. And thirdly, was she like the queen of decrescendo? What is happening? It's so... Everyone writes off Cherubino, but it's honestly so hard and so pretty if you know what to do with it. And von Stade knows what to do with it. But it just goes to show that any aria, even an aria that, seems very sort of shallow and playful on top, can also be very, very moving if you do the right things with it. I can't imagine that the reaction of the singer playing Susanna was anything but pure, genuine marvel and awe at the performance she got to witness, literally like inches away from her face. The only thing I will say is that I feel like she covers her eval a lot coming down, because it's almost like when she says "e se non ho chi mora," it's a "e," yeah? But it becomes almost like a "se." It's very sort of weird and flat. Sa. And I don't fully understand why she's doing that. I don't really, it's a little off-putting because because I know the word and I just don't understand why she's covering it so much. But then again, she just killed the entire rest of the aria, and maybe I'm just being so stupid picky. All of her other vowels are super crisp and clear as day, so I don't really know what happened there. I love her. I think our timbres are very similar, and it was upon hearing her Cherubino, literally this aria, not this version, but this aria, that I realized that mezzi didn't necessarily have to be this super dark timbre that I don't have. In all honesty, both von Stade and I are probably Zwischenfach, which I will cover when I finally get around to talking about the Fach system. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just love reacting to these different arias, but okay. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this aria explained of Non so più cosa son, cosa faccio from Le Nozze di Figaro by Mozart. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Use my code OPERAUP to get 15% off at singprettydesigns.com. Buy me a coffee. And if you have a favorite moment from this aria or this opera, or you have a favorite Cherubino that is not Federica von Stade, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Addio.
Addio.